Hi, I'm Chelsea.
Hi, I'm Sarah.
Let's talk death over drinks.
So my drink today, I did an it's a pralines and cream espresso martini.
Ooh, so you did it.
I did it, yes, and it's my own creation. I just messed around with it, and
Is it good at
it
least?
is good, yeah. And it's all alcohol except for like a shot and a half of half and half.
Nice. No, when I was at Total Wine, I almost bought stuff and I was like, well, I'll get it for maybe one of the next videos or something. But yeah, this one is mine. So it is the Blackberry Gin Sour. And it's actually really good.
Yeah, you sent me that recipe. I want to try it.
Mhm.
I already have my drink planned out for our next video, which I'll reveal that later in our next video.
All right, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
These murders took place at 112 Ocean Avenue. And it started with the Defeos. So it was Ronnie or Ronald and Louise Defeo, the mother and father, and their 5 children. So it was Ronnie Jr., Don, Allison, John, and Mark. And they moved into this 3-story house, which I don't know if you can see in the background. This is
yeah.
the little house. So that's the Amityville house.
I love it.
That I have.
That's so cool.
I was like, I have to get that out. It's perfect for the story. So they did what pretty much any couple from the city wanted to do. They wanted to get away from the hustle and bustle of the city and move into a country life. And that's exactly what Amityville was. It was your typical small town lifestyle village. So they moved out there, and it was known that apparently the residents didn't really like the DeFeos, but it was Ronnie DeFeo Jr. that kind of stirred up the thoughts and feelings towards the DeFeo family. He was very troubled. He was a mischief. He desired women, guns, and cars. People were even scared of him. And he was also a known drug addict. His drug of choice was heroin. In 1970, he dropped out of high school. And that's exactly when he became
kicked out. He wasn't kicked out. He actually dropped out.
I was reading he was dropped out, but I mean, it could be very well known that he was kicked out. I mean, either way, he didn't graduate.
He's gone.
Yeah, he's no education for you. Which, of course, again, then originally started his addiction to heroin. And he was very reliant on his family, so he still stayed at home. And there were reports that Ronnie Sr., his father, was actually very abusive, physically and verbally, to the wife and the kids. And just a side note, Ronnie DeFeo Jr. also was known as Butch. So going forward, I will be calling him Butch just to differentiate from Ronnie Sr. and Ronnie Jr. So in November 1974, it was known that Butch was actually getting better. Like, he was turning over a new leaf. He was working out of his dad's dealership, and he started, kind of creating better habits. And on November 13th, Butch left early, and he did a couple things before that. He stopped at the mall, but he also did use heroin, supposedly. So he was at a bar, he was drinking, he was trying to call his family to come pick him up from the bar. After several attempts, he wasn't able to get a hold of them. So at that point, he said, well, I'm just going to walk home. So he left the bar. A few hours later, he ended up coming back, and he told everybody at the bar, including a couple of his friends, that his parents were dead, and therefore starting this whole mass hysteria of what happened to his entire family. They were all shot by a rifle while they slept, and they were known to have died at 3:14 a.m. in the morning. And things kind of get interesting from there. So one thing that triggered me when I first read that, because he has 6 members of his family, not including himself, so 7 total, right? These 6 members all were shot. Not one of them woke up. So you would think going room to room, eventually somebody would have woken up. And
yeah, I thought about that too. Like, how could you not hear that gunshot?
Right. And so there were rumors that he had drugged them, but during the autopsy report, no drugs were found in their system. He changed his story many times. And it went from going back to his father's dealership, he had mentioned that it was a front for the Italian mob, so the mafia, trying to portray that it was a hitman's fault. He also mentioned that it was his sister who did the killing, and he pretty much went and killed his sister in defense of his family once he figured out what she had done.
He blamed Dawn.
Yes, Dawn. But with the evidence, after cops were pretty much searching the premises, all of the evidence at the time led directly to Butch. So Butch was the sole suspect in this. They found a box that belonged to the rifle. It was a 35 caliber Marlin rifle, which was the same weapon that killed the Defeos. And it didn't take them very long to really solve the case. They considered it solved 2 days after the fact, after the murders. After a long, serious interrogation, Butch admitted to the locations of where he dumped the clothes, the cartridges, and the rifle. So on November 20th, so this is 7 days after the murders, he was charged with the 6 counts of murder. During the pre-trial, they tried to throw out his confession and they tried to proclaim police brutality, that was a huge issue in it. Like during the interrogations, that they were pretty much threatening him, and tried to forcefully get this confession out. However, it was not thrown out, so they were unsuccessful during this pretrial. During the actual trial, his lawyer then reverted to him being insane. He was trying to say that Butch was unaware that he had killed his parents and his family, pretty much that he blacked out. And it wasn't until much later that he came to and realized what he had done. Now, on the other side, they stood up and said otherwise, that he knew exactly what he was doing. They also were trying to find the motives, which included the need for money, which would definitely go hand in hand with his drug addiction, the abuse from his father, which would be a huge one. I mean, anybody I feel like would have that in their mind, that they would want to kill somebody who's abusing them. So I feel like that's a fair motive.
You were talking about heroin, him using heroin, and I think that was like his first, or the drug that he first started with, but I also read that he was into LSD, and that, both LSD and heroin were like really fucking him up, and you mentioned like his father abusing him, but from what I read too, like his father also, so Butch was, when he was in school, like he would be bullied, and so his dad also taught him not to be bullied or to fight back, and so he started doing that. But in doing so, and like with the abuse from his father as well, he became like a very angry individual and very violent, and to where like he acted out. And you were talking about like the community and how it was really him that ostracized the entire family from like the community. It was because of how he acted, and how like, because he was an individual who just didn't give a shit from it about anything. Like he worked with his dad at the dealership, but he hardly showed up. And it was almost like, at least from what I read, it almost switched gears. It was like he started then bullying and abusing his father, not physically abusing, but just
almost like lashing back out.
Yeah, and it was like they ended up being afraid of him, from what I read, and then they were trying to just tease him with anything, just to make him calm down. Yeah,
which it actually goes into some of the stuff that I was researching later on too, how that ties into how that role kind of switched over. Yeah, but there are just little things that he did that showed that he was scared of his son. And rightfully so.
No shit.
In November 1975, so a year later, his fate had two options. Either he was going to be guilty and he was going to serve life in prison, or he was going to be not guilty by means of insanity and released in a few years. So I feel like that is exactly why people tend to try to claim the insanity role, because then they're just released and then it's, they're going to be out and about.
Well, they're supposed to go to like treatment or something and then like be rehabilitated or something like that.
Yeah. It only took the jury 2 days for the verdict, which he was found guilty with a possibility of parole for each case after 25 years.
Yeah. So they rejected the insanity plea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They did not believe that in that at all. They're
Nope.
like, nope, he knew what he was doing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then later, this is where the Lutzes come into play, and where this whole
wait, a year after the murder, so around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Yeah.
So they moved in, thus starting the whole Amityville horror and getting into the paranormal.
It was their story that sparked it all. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So from there, and anybody who has seen the movies knows that there were claims of demonic entities and activity, which led them to completely flee the home 28 days after the fact.
Yep.
So I'm going to start off with George Lutz's point of view first of what happened. So that way we can kind of dig a little bit deeper into what could have, pretty much fact or fiction, which again, we'll never know for sure.
Yeah.
But it's kind of fun to speculate based off of everybody's points of view of it. So they moved into this house, according to George, his wife, Kathy, and her 3 children. So he was the stepfather of her children. The movies did get that right. I always like to compare, the actual story versus the movie, which some of it's pretty, I feel like that a lot of it was pretty spot on after kind of looking at his point of view of everything. So she was starstruck with the home. And so at that point, he was pretty much sold on it. But it wasn't long after that they started to experience activity in the home. So some of it started with their daughter, Missy, and she had an imaginary friend named Jody, who appeared to her as a pig, which seems really weird to me. It's very interesting. And
remember how last episode I was saying like demons will appear to you in what form you want them to appear to you to?
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah. I mean, think of pigs. I mean, maybe not like
the little girl. How old was she?
But they were all
like
pretty
little
young.
and young.
She was young. Yeah. She was really young. I mean, definitely under the age of 10.
She probably liked pigs. Maybe she had like a stuffed animal pig somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. And it came to her as like either a big pig or a small pig. There were even claims that they saw like a flying pig, like it was flying at some point, or like with glowing eyes. So just different forms of a pig, as well as also a little boy. So, and her room apparently was actually one of the better rooms. Even though there was some activity in that room, it was actually the best room to be in. Now, next to her room, they called it the sewing room because they made it a sewing room, and it was one of the rooms where 2 of the family members of the Defeos were murdered.
Do you know which 2?
I do not. I didn't get into too much detail about that because, again, this was mainly from his point of view. So I don't know. I don't know the details.
George Lutz?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So he's pretty much explaining this. And in this room, this was the worst room in the house. And it was known where flies would come in and leave. And it wouldn't be all the time. And they would accumulate, they would die in there, but they would just pretty much come and go. So it's not like they were always in there. And this is also the room where the priest went in as he was trying to bless the house, where he heard "get out." So something of demonic force told him to get out. And apparently he was also slapped in this room.
The priest was?
Mm-hmm. So, and that I believe was also in the movie, which is kind of crazy. So that was also one of the real portrayals of it. they also had friends that would come over. He would have friends over at the house, and they knew kind of what was going on. But as they would converse, they would hear footsteps in the floor above them. So therefore, kind of validating what they were feeling. And even he was saying, to have somebody pretty much say that you're not crazy was a good feeling. And he had seen things himself of in Missy's room, he saw something kind of running across or like moving in the room. He said the boathouse, because he had a boat out there and it was like one of their treasured possessions because they used it a lot. The door would be opened unexplainably, and he would constantly check on it because, it's a boat, you never know what people are going to be doing out there. So he constantly checked on it, but the door would always be mysteriously opened. They would hear door slamming. Kathy was supposedly touched. Another huge accusation was the like green slime that would appear like on the walls and the doorknobs.
It's actually green.
Yeah, it was green. They would hear sounds. He also had a ceramic lion that his wife had given him, which they later on threw out. Then it would mysteriously, so he threw it away, and it appeared back into the house. And then after that, it would kind of appear in different spots. It would be moved a little bit here and there. So like they couldn't get rid of it at this point. They also
just
found
like Annabelle.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I was like, that's Annabelle.
I know.
I'm like, deja vu.
I know.
So they had also taken a couple pictures, which another one, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but it is the infamous picture of, it's kind of looking at the base of the stairway, and there's like a couple rooms. And at the base of the stairway, kind of peeking out of the room, there's a little boy. You can see him, and he has bright white eyes. So there's like, no, you can't see the iris or the pupil or anything. It's just bright white. And he's just kind of peering out by the staircase. So that was a huge picture that came about. And a new picture that I had seen was he, like, those taxidermy, like moose or deer. So he had a moose from his uncle, and he had taken a picture of it, and you can actually see it. I couldn't see it as well up close. I could actually see it more far away, but it was like a face formed in one of the moose's ears. So that was kind of interesting.
Inside the ear?
Yeah, it was like formed like in the ear. So I'll send those to you so you could take.
I wonder if like the little boy, like with the glowing eyes, because I think it was The Conjuring 2, where, and you know how I think the movies, I can't remember which one it was, but Lorraine is going through the
first
house.
One.
Is it the
that
first
was Lori
one?
though? Mm-hmm. His name was Lori.
The little boy that she saw with the glowing eyes. No. There's a scene in one of the movies where she's going through, they're doing like a seance or something, and she gets sucked in, and she actually acts as Butch, and she's over there carrying the rifle.
Oh yeah, that's shooting. In The Devil Made Me Do It.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's it. Okay.
Yeah, it was like the opening scene to that movie.
It was an opening scene, but there was a little boy, and he was peeking around, and he had like that bright white eyes. So I wonder if that was part of it. Yeah, because if they heard it, or that was something else that was brought up, they like threw that in the movie for sure.
Well, so I was actually going to bring that up later on. So you kind of jumped the gun on that. But it's okay. It's okay. So I'll get into it. Right. Yes.
Just kidding.
No, for real though. Because, they did an interview with Ed and Lorraine Warren. And so that kind of ties into that as well. So I'll talk about more in detail about that here in a second. So those were the two big pictures in that.
I have to say, so sorry. I just have to say, like, can you imagine? Because you know how we watch the paranormal shows, the investigation shows. Mm-hmm. If like Ed and Lorraine were still alive and younger, like they would so have their own TV show, and we'd be watching that shit all the time.
Oh, for sure.
It'd be probably like some of the better shows.
Well,
Pretty
and
cool.
you think about it because at that time too, because I mean they didn't have the technology that we do
No,
today,
yeah.
and
They
she
had
was this
her,
clairvoyant.
and he was a
Yeah.
demonologist.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Yep.
interesting. It's just so
And they
interesting.
worked really well together. And
Yeah.
I mean, they were infamous. I mean, they were
Yeah.
well known throughout the country, even
Yep.
almost internationally too.
Yep.
Because I know with the Amityville case, I mean, it was international news. I mean, this
Yeah.
was
Did you know they weren't all that involved in it though? Like that was
no.
Hollywood
Mm-mm.
making it more and more,
Yep.
like as if they were more in it. Yeah. But
Hmm.
they weren't really that involved.
Yep. So back to the story. Um, so a lot of different people experienced things in this house, and again, this is from George's point of view. There was Dr. Tenhouse, and I don't know if he was from one of the universities. He didn't really touch on who that was, but he was one of the people that came to investigate with Ed and Lorraine. And he apparently, as soon as he got into the house, he levitated 2 feet in the air. And which later, like a few years down the road,
See, I
he
wish they could
did.
get that on like a recording. Did they get that on a recording? Probably not, right? It's
Well,
always the
so
most like interesting shit is never caught.
well, apparently it was recorded that happened.
But where's
And
okay. But you would think that footage would be like out there somewhere.
well, I don't think it was like recorded,
Like video recorded,
video
videotaped.
recorded. It was just like
Again, I think it would be
stated.
videotaped.
Yeah. But it was just, it had been
Yes.
stated.
Yeah,
So,
see,
which is
that's
different, right?
I know.
Again, yeah, it kind of goes into just the speculation of things of
Yeah.
kind of you have to make up your own mind if that really
Yeah, I
happened or
know.
not.
I know.
Which
I'd freak the
later,
fuck out though if I saw that myself. I'd
oh,
be like, I don't know what I would do.
so I'll tell you about this later, but something crazy, Sarah, happened when we were watching Ghost Adventures the other night. But that's a
The other
whole,
night,
yes, like literally
did
two
you
nights
do
ago.
another investigation before
No,
that? Okay.
no.
So, well,
I
just
haven't done one in like a year.
oh,
But
okay.
it was weird.
Okay, but
I'll
just
just
say it
tell you
now.
now.
Yeah. I'm like, don't make me wait.
Okay. So they came out with new episodes. The first one streamed on Thursday. And so Chris and I were watching it. And with Ghost Adventures, they have a mini series. It's called House Calls. So that's more residential areas.
Yeah, yeah.
But the Ghost Adventures itself, very rarely do they do like residential areas. It's normally like really well known haunted spots like
Places, yeah.
hotels or, asylums, whatever.
Yeah.
So he happened to be doing a residential home, and they had suspected negative energy, like a demonic force, that the husband was possessed, and their daughter was seeing stuff that they couldn't explain. And so they were just seeking help, right? And I honestly believe because their reactions as they were telling it, I mean, their reactions of it and like crying, you could tell they were very emotional. I really feel like it was very genuine. So they start investigating this house, and not a lot happened. They couldn't catch anything. I mean, like they heard voices here and there, but there was one part where they were all in the kitchen and they kind of grounded themselves like up against, like the countertops and stuff because like a lot of stuff was going on. And Zach had asked a question, and it went silent, and me and Chris both heard like a woman mumbling something in the background. And so then they kept on, but they didn't say anything about it, which was weird to me. I was like, how did they not hear
Yeah,
that? Like, why
usually they
didn't they
replay it like
commentate
3
on it?
times. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Or like say, oh, at this point, an
Yeah.
EVP was captured by our cameras and blah, blah. Didn't do that. So I thought that was really weird. And it was bugging me throughout the entire episode. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to rewind it. I'm going to go back to that part because I want to hear it again.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing there. And Chris heard it too.
So what did the woman say?
Well, it
Like
wasn't ending. It was just mumbled. It was just like,
and did it sound oh really? Did it sound like it
yeah.
was like so you said in the background, but where like was it then to you? Like did it sound like it was coming from the TV or did it sound like it was coming behind you? Do you have surround
we have
sound?
surround sound. Yeah, we have surround sound. So, but it sounded like it was coming from the TV. So, and Chris heard it too because I was like, oh, I heard that. And he was like, oh, I heard that too.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's weird. They didn't commentate on it. And then I rewound it like several times because it
Do
was
you know anything about the house you guys just bought?
no.
Just saying.
We cleansed it though when we first got here because
With sage?
I don't know. I just, yeah, with sage, like we have a lot of different
That's
sages
so funny.
to cleanse.
Oh, wow. I didn't know you were that deep into it.
Ever since that attachment, it
Oh,
really freaked me out. So
yeah.
I would rather, like, I cleanse the house just to be rid of negative energy in general, you know, just to kind of start fresh since it's a new house and we don't know anything about it. And, but I thought it was weird. I mean, I get chills
I
talking
think
about it.
realtors have to reveal if someone died in a house.
Mhm.
I think it's like a law now, but I'm not totally positive. No, they're not.
Only if you ask. Only
Oh,
if you ask.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Which
I know.
apparently
So,
the house that we lived in Albuquerque, apparently 2 people died in that house.
ugh.
And we didn't know that until our neighbors told us. I was like, oh, thanks.
Did
Now that
I-
we're moving.
Did I ever tell you like when we moved into the, well, it wasn't when we moved in, it was like a while later. But I swear there was a series of months, and I'm not kidding, and I still don't know what to think about it. I'm like, oh, Sarah, you're so stupid. But, so I always go to bed before anyone else because I'm an early person. I can't function past like 8:30. It's like I'm in bed by 9. No, but so I would lay down and they would be like doing whatever and usually playing video games. But I would always hear people talking and I always thought it was them. And I couldn't ever really make out what was said, but it would always be like multiple voices. And I would always hear people talking. And like one night I mentioned it to Jordan and he's like, "What are you talking about, Sarah?" And I was like, "I think you guys are talking all the time." And he's like, "No, we are really quiet because we know you're sleeping and we have the door shut." And like I have the bedroom door shut too. And then, I'm like, and then we made it into a joke where it's like, Sarah hears voices, which was pretty funny. But what's weird is once I mentioned that I heard, oh, and there were times too, like I would hear music and it was just weird, right? So anyway, but once I told Jordan that I heard voices at night, it just sounds funny. Like I've never heard them since. Like, isn't that
Oh,
weird?
that's weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you call them out and they're like, oh shit, she knows we're here.
Girl, the hell? She's all spying on us.
This is a private conversation.
I know. But I thought like that's what freaked me out the most, I think, is that it stopped. I've never heard it since. Like, and I think I told Jordan probably about 5 months now. It's been about 5 months now. But I heard that shit forever. Like, and I was just like, gosh, they're so loud. But I couldn't really make out what they were saying. And then
that's kind of how that was. It sounded like, a woman mumbling. And I say the background because it was like the background of where they were at,
Yeah, it's like muffled voices talking. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we didn't hear it after that because I really thought it was so weird. I was like, that's like, why didn't they mention that? I was like, oh, that's bugging me. Yeah. And that's never happened.
That's
before.
That's
freaky. It really did freak me out. I'm like, whoa.
Oh, goodness.
So with all of this paranormal talk, it also kind of goes into what George said. So as he was talking about all of these experiences that he was experiencing in the house, he had even said, you kind of you question your own senses, your own thinking, and like all the doubts seek in, which I honestly feel that because you try to logically think of everything of what could possibly be causing these strange occurrences. And when you can't explain it, that's when it kind of hits you like it's unexplained, like you can't explain it. They also had a red room. They called it a red room, and it was like a secret room behind a bookcase, which their dog, who was a black lab, refused to go into this room.
Why did they have a red room?
I don't think it's that kind of red room.
Wait, what red room are you thinking of?
50 Shades of Grey.
I thought you were like being perverted. I'm just kidding.
I mean, no.
I'm thinking like
it was literally red.
Oh, okay.
was literally red. That's why it's called the red room.
Okay. Also, what are they doing?
I digress.
Well, what is it?
No, it was
like,
literally
it's like
red. It's a secret room. But it was something that they found, so it wasn't like they built on it. Like Kathy was the one who found it. She's like, "Hey, like check out this room that I found.
Let's paint it red."
It's literally red. Let's clarify right now. Red room.
That's funny.
Nothing else. But yeah, so they had a dog, and he refused to go in there, which animals always have that sixth sense, and know whether to like fight or flight, right?
I know Jordan and I talk about that all the time. We're like, man,
yeah,
like pay attention to the animals.
Mm-hmm. Seriously, though.
Seriously, I would.
Harley sometimes scares the crap out of me because she just will stare down the hallway at nothing, and she'll stay locked down there, and I'm like, what the hell are you looking at?
I know you're all get my coordinating devices
out.
To an EVP in your own home.
Seriously, though. Yeah. Oh no, Chris would kill me.
Is anyone with me?
I've wanted to. Chris would kill me. He's like, don't be inviting that shit in here.
Exactly. It's like like playing with the Ouija board.
Yeah.
Have you done that?
No, that's one thing I won't do.
Me either. Yeah. Jordan wanted to get like something as like Halloween decor for it, and I was like, don't you dare. I'm like, that is not coming in our house ever.
Nope.
Not okay.
No matter what form, whether it's decoration or not, that's still a gateway.
Yeah.
So
the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Screw that.
No, absolutely not.
Scary.
So let's kind of jump into Ed and Lorraine Warren's interview. And this was like a national, TV interview. So they did claim that Amityville, like the horrors of it and what the Lutz proclaimed, was genuine. So when they first asked George, when they were called to come investigate the home, they asked George, so what happened to you at this house? And all he could tell him was, and he kept pointing at him like, and he's like, really? No, I don't know. Because even though everything had made headlines with the story, the Warrens didn't know until someone had called out to them. Like they didn't know about the murders at all until they brought them to the location. Mm-hmm. That's when they were kind of filled into what had happened. So from their point of view, George was afraid to say what happened to him, because at first they were kind of getting annoyed with him, like, why aren't you telling us what happened? And then they realized, like, no, he's scared. He wouldn't go to the house. He told him that he wouldn't go back. He said, I'll meet you 4 blocks down. I'll give you the keys and you can go to the house. He's like, I'm not going there. And this again, so this is where it kind of goes back to the devil made me do it in that beginning opening scene.
Yeah.
So what she says, and I don't know if you remember what she says, but what she says on that movie is true. That's the word for word what she said when she ended up going into one of the rooms, and it was in the sewing room. So again, that was the worst room in the house, according to George. And she had walked in there and said, I hope this is as close to hell as I'll ever get. That is what she actually said when she was going through the house. She said as soon as she got into the house, she felt terrible depression. So again, this is kind of going back to, because they mentioned the statues that were around the house, and they were religious statues. Mm-hmm. So this kind of goes back to how you were saying that the father, Ronnie Defeo, was scared of his son, Ronnie Jr. Mm-hmm. So he had those statues made and specifically set around the house because of him. And he said due to the devil on his back, referring to Butch, Ronnie Jr.
Yeah. See, that's interesting. I didn't read that part, but I can believe it based on what I read of Butch's behavior. Mm-hmm. And like how the drug use and how like angry and violent he was. And he was just, he was someone you just couldn't control. Like you would never know what he would be doing next.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So those, I believe the Lutzes ended up having them removed later on. But no, they actually served a purpose as to why they were there. So it
It's like
was because of
someone
Butch.
placing crosses all around their house.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, so another interesting fact. So when the Lutzes moved in, they all slept on the same beds that were there from the Defeos. So not the same
Oh,
mattresses. The
oh,
mattresses were
still
changed out, but it was the same
like the
beds.
frames were still there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So they used
Ew.
the same frames. Yep.
I'm sorry. That's
So
disturbing.
very,
What? I
yeah.
don't, yeah. Ew. I don't like that. I'm sorry. I'm trying to
I
like
mean,
imagine it. I'm just like, nope. Mm-mm.
well, and if you think back to haunted objects in general, right? Because they say that objects can be possessed and haunted. It's all of that negative energy that's just
Yeah, you'd want to
soaked
get rid
in
of
there.
everything. Ugh,
Yeah.
that's so disturbing.
Right. Yeah. Um, so aside from that, a lot of people again had negative effects in the house. They just, they felt ill. They just, they've had negative experiences.
Is
He
anyone
they
living in
didn't
that
really touch
house
on that.
now? Do you know? I want to say
Ooh,
yes, but because I know they like redid it. Because Jordan and I
I think
actually
it was put on the
watched.
market, right? Like not too long ago.
Yeah, there. Yeah, because they had it. It was on TV, and they had like kind of redone it in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
But yeah, I was like, and then of course Jordan and I are like, ooh, we should go visit. It's like,
Well,
well, maybe not.
I mean, I would. I mean,
I
because
know.
even
It's like that
hoax or not,
morbid
right?
curiosity.
Hmm. And it did. It became a huge tourist spot because
Yeah.
Amityville was a really, really small town and didn't have any activity whatsoever. They were big on fishing and just, community. And
How
then as soon
sad
as
to
all
have
of this
like
happened,
horror like that put you on the map
yeah,
where everyone knows
being
you
next
now.
door, imagine being next door, living even next to that house,
Yeah.
I mean,
I'd
I feel
probably
like,
move.
yeah. And another interesting point too. So like when the shots were fired, none of the neighbors heard either. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Because I mean, I feel like
So I read that he
rifles in
was
general are
looking,
loud.
yeah, they're super loud. But and I don't know if he used it or not, but I read that he was searching for a silencer a couple weeks before the
Mhm.
murders.
But he didn't end
So
up getting one though, right?
that's what I interpreted because it didn't say that he
Yeah,
used it,
yeah.
but it's interesting because I always thought that too, like why from the moment he killed the parents, like you would think someone would get up, all of them. Like what was that
Mhm.
noise? Like is that
Yeah.
just a gun? I mean, it's in your house, so it's like super
Mhm.
loud. I don't know. That whole part is like really weird.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I don't
maybe
know.
because like the police interview with him, how I was talking about, like he was saying that his mother's a shit cook because they were asking him about, did you eat dinner with your family that night? And
Hmm.
he said no because his mother was a shit cook or something like that. And yeah, and so you got to wonder because like with the drug use that he did, if he did drug them somehow to make
But in
them
the autopsy
incapacitated.
report, they didn't find anything.
Oh gosh, see,
Remember?
that's even weirder. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, how could you not wake up? I don't know.
Hmm. I don't know.
Ugh.
I have no idea. But
And the thing is too, like even when he killed his brothers and sisters, he was not far from them. It was
mhm.
just like bam, bam, go to the next room. Like one, like I read, like it was like just it wasn't it a couple inches from her face. Like wasn't that Dawn? I want to say that was
Dawn.
Dawn. Yeah,
Hers was the only one
like her like the
apparently that
left side of
was
her face like
so.
collapsed
Mhm.
from the gunshot. Like ugh.
Yeah. And again, that kind of like when they were talking about the fact of him blaming his sister, Dawn to have been the main killer and then he killed her off, they did pinpoint that her death was probably the most gruesome because of that effect.
Yeah, and I think it
So,
started at the back of the neck, if I remember, and then it exited out of her cheek or something like that. But then, or I don't know, I can't remember the full details, but it had something to do with the neck and it came out. But then it also like, because it ruined her whole skull. And that's why her face, like, it just collapsed in on itself. I'm like, oh,
yep.
yeah.
Well, like when I was reading this story, because I didn't know all of this other portion of it, all before even researching this deep into it, I knew the Amityville Horror House as like, yes, the DeFeos died at the hands of their own family member and the horrors that came after it. And so that was like pretty much what made headline news and brought tourist attractions and the movies and the books and all kinds of different things into it. But going back into Ed and Lorraine's perspective of it, because they went in and investigated the house. They also mentioned that they did the polygraph test. So it was both George and Kathy that did the polygraph test.
And they passed.
And they passed. They did. No, they totally did.
Steal your thunder.
No, they totally did. And, during that TV show too, Ed came out and he said, I'll give anybody, whoever first comes to prove that whatever happened to the Lutzes was a hoax, I will give you $3,000. And no one ever claimed that. Like he was so set in what he believed that it was so genuine that he was willing to offer the first person who can prove it wrong $3,000. But
it's hard to prove that because
I know
it's hard to prove wrong or right. Honestly, I know. Did this happen? Did that not happen? Yeah, because at that point, I truly do believe it's just that individual's experience.
And everybody, I mean, who's to say that? Because I feel like before researching this, I feel like it was known that Butch was possessed. Like he was possessed, and that's what led him to kill his family. I don't know if that was the perception of
the anger and the violence and just, I don't know, the shit person that he was.
He doesn't claim anything paranormal. Like in his interview, he was pretty much like, the Lutzes are bullshit. What they say is bullshit. There's nothing demonic or paranormal about the house. It was just a matter of that he killed them, So he
hated them.
Yeah. And he didn't claim, which I feel like anybody who's willing to get out of something like that, I mean, they would claim, that they were possessed, but he didn't. He was like, no.
Well, that's why he tried to do the insanity plea.
Well, it wasn't him that did it. It was his lawyer.
Well, yeah, but you have to agree to it. Your lawyer cannot act and do anything without you saying, yes, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
He just got pissed because the jury didn't accept it. And so he tried to appeal because he said his lawyer forced him to do that. You can't sit there through the whole jury trial, with your lawyer making the case that you're insane at the time of the murders. And then after the fact, after the jury didn't accept it, then get pissed off and say, well, he made me do that.
Right.
I don't buy it.
No.
Because if the jury would have accepted it, then he'd be like, yeah, I was insane. I was insane at the time. Whatever.
Again, he's just so inconsistent. And there's so much detail into it. I mean, this is, I feel like, just the tip of the iceberg because I feel like there's so much to uncover. And for the sake of time for this, I mean, we kind of had to touch base on just the key points of it. And even that it's a lot. It's a lot of information.
Yep.
So.
But were you going to mention he died?
Like last year? I was. Yeah.
In prison.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Always stealing my thunder.
I know. So yeah, what date was it? It was like, I want to say it was March something 2021. Found it. March 12th, 2021 at age 69.
Yes. Yep.
Still incarcerated.
Yep.
I wonder what he died of though. I didn't look that up.
Oh, it says of natural causes or some underlying health condition. So it wasn't like anything.
Maybe his ticker gave away.
like, okay, it's time for you to go. Bye.
I know.
That's fucked up.